And ideas. You've just crossed over into the Twilight Zone.
Jay, we have done many an iconic episode so far on this run. And whether these episodes that we've done thus far are better, I think they probably are, as actual episodes. Perhaps there is no more iconic twist or iconic ending than the episode we're going to do right now, which is To Serve Man. Now, I watched this episode with 7 first-year uni students who were all, you know, gagged, aghast, amazed, shocked, amazed. You watched this last night with your wonderful Olivia. I'm gonna guess that she was amazed.
Yeah.
It just works. It just absolutely works. Now, was Olivia invested? Was she into the episode up until that point, or was it just that the ending is so good that it kind of backhanded her into loving it?
No, she was into it the whole time. I think seeing the 9-foot alien was actually probably the most interesting thing.
I love To Serve Man. I always have, and it kind of in Twilight Zone communities and stuff and rankings and that sort of thing, it kind of gets not necessarily a bad hand, but I think a lot of people underrate it as the cookbook episode. You know, it's a cookbook, is iconic. It's Simpsons, it's Naked Gun. It has gone beyond the Twilight Zone. It is beyond iconic in all of its forms. It is the arguably most iconic twist of the entire series. But I still love it. I think Lloyd Botner is great as William Chambers and is so, you know, enticing. And I just think Serling does an excellent job at building the atmosphere and building that not even tension, building the interest. Because this isn't an episode of mounting tension, because for the most part, we're kind of taken in by the Canamits. I mean, this is that area. This is what I wrote of it. The one with those 3 magic words that anybody with a passing knowledge of the show or a previous viewing of the episode screamed in their heads the minute they read the episode title. But as with our last episode discussed, this is so much more than those 3 words. Despite my own admitted love of those 3 words myself, as a matter of fact, I recently showed a group of 6 or so people who had never heard of the show, never mind seeing it. This episode is their first ever episode, for in many ways it epitomizes everything that people have come to know of the show. Richard Keel is wonderfully still and sardonic as every one of our Canamits. Suzanne Cummings has the great line and takes relish in it. Lloyd Bachner is our centre and is great too, adding a further oddity to the episode of the 4th wall break that fits here in this episode all in all. A great, and ultimately very classic episode of television. Ranked incredibly highly, TV Guide ranked the episode number 11 on the 100 greatest episodes of all time and ranked it the greatest twist of all time. Time listed the episode among the top 10 Twilight Zone episodes, and Rolling Stone named the episode first on its list of the top 25 best Twilight Zone episodes. And it's understandable why. It's an iconic twist. Is it a great episode? I think so. I do think it's a great episode.
I think so. I knew nothing about the twist. And I was invested the whole time.
Yeah.
I mean, we can go. We'll go bit by bit through it. But...
Yeah, comes from a short story by Damon Knight, who wrote the story while his wife was out cheating with him and another man. And it's a great short story, and it's all there. He has short pig-like creatures with green hair and shorts, and who wear shorts, and he understands why Serling chose to not portray them that way. He said it would be like a bad Disney film, and especially with the iconic Canamit design that we do end up with, the wonderful Richard Keel. And the ending, the final "It's a Cookbook" is the last 3 words of the short story, and it's two guys in a bar instead. It's very slow and sardonic, and it's sort of it's a cookbook, and there's that glaring ominous of what's going to come next. Different mediums, literature and TV and film and all that sort of thing. And Serling takes the bold approach, and he's all the more successful for it. He made one of the most iconic, with his adaptation of this script, of this short story rather. He made one of the most iconic moments in television, full stop, really, with his cookbook. I'm going to phrase this as a question, but I don't expect you to have the answer. Does Lloyd Buckner in any way look familiar to you, Jay?
Yeah, he's actually my best friend. No, I'm joking. I don't know.
He's the father of Ellis from Die Hard.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Okay.
Oh. Hans, Bubby, I'm your white knight. Love Ellis from Die Hard.
That's a random piece of joke. Okay.
Interesting episode, because beyond its iconic twist, so it opens, Mr. Chambers, it is mealtime. Kindly state your preference. We go, all right, he's traveling, but he's clearly disheveled. He's not happy. Is he, distressed? What's happening here? And please deposit cigarette receptacle. And it's that, wonderful dry tone. And then we get just great set design, the mirror in the wall and the sink in the wall. And you can't even use too much sink water. Please conserve water. And then we get this shift, which is not a Twilight Zone thing that we've ever had or will ever have again, which is Lloyd Buckner as William Chambers narrating.
I know.
Yeah.
What the hell?
And it's great.
I was with it. I was also expecting Rod to start talking right when William Chambers started talking, and then I was like, oh, okay, I guess not.
I was listening to some podcast, and I listened to a few different Twilight Zone ones. They're all great. Specifically the Twilight Zone podcast, which is very, very good. And he was talking about how it's not really much of a change because it is another sort of velvet-voiced, middle-aged white man. And I was thinking, when I heard that, my first thought was like, oh, could this have been used in, not necessarily the After Hours, but something like The Hitchhiker or Mirror Image, where we get a female point of view? Could this have been, but in this, obviously, we do just get another beautifully, Lloyd Buckner just reeling it off. This is the way that nightmares begin, or perhaps end. Very simple, direct, unadorned, incredible, and yet so terribly real, that even while they're happening, we live with them and digest them and assimilate them. And if it's 12 o'clock noon now, that's what you preoccupy yourself with. You don't think about 12 o'clock noon on the next day or the day after that. That's what we should have been thinking about. Tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, we were preoccupied with hands on a clock when we should have been checking off a calendar. And you go, firstly, you clock in, because if you know the Twilight Zone, you go, oh, this is different. We're getting stock footage of New York, which I think actually blends pretty well. And we get this spaceship over America, and we're going, oh, okay, we're straight in. Interesting. And then before we get straight in, quote unquote, we're at the United Nations. And they're all working together on it. I think you've seen this. I think you love it. But I kept thinking of the movie Arrival. And
yeah, me too.
What I love about Arrival is that all of the pods are in completely random places. And it's like a middle of a field in America. I mean, you look at that versus Independence Day, and it's like it's above the White House. Yeah. And different films going for different things. But this sort of has the same vibe of like, we're hearing that one's landed just outside of New Jersey. You go, I'm like, sure, okay. So they're landing everywhere. And then we get this line, it has happened that one of the craft has landed close to the building. Ooh. And then we get the arrival of the first Canomit and that incredible shadow, Albert, just sensational directing. And it's where we meet Richard Keel of Jaws fame. Not Jaws, but Jaws of James Bond fame. And he's got this thing, and we're not dealing with short little pig creatures. We're dealing with this huge hulking height and this sort of enlarged, exposed brain. And you go, wow, this is something I've never seen before. And I think the design does such a wonderful job of exuding intelligence, if you know what I mean. Maybe I'm doing it sort of, maybe I'm doing a humanoid bias, but like just that huge brain and that sort of humanoid thing that puts us at ease, it gives off the vibe in the design of an intelligent creature from another planet.
Yeah. I mean, adding that onto the fact that they don't even have to open their mouth to talk, and they're already speaking our language. They're clearly very highly intelligent creatures.
And this is a very long way into the episode to end the teaser. It's 6 minutes in before we get the and I like both Serling intros and outros, and I like it for the continuity of the series. Does in this case kind of feel a little bit hat on a hat. Fortunately, it's just short enough that it doesn't kind of get in the way, but respectfully submitted for your perusal. Canomit, height a little over 9 feet, weight in the neighborhood of 350 pounds, origin unknown, motives therein hangs the tale. For in just a moment, we're going to ask you to shake hands figuratively with a Christopher Columbus from another galaxy in another time. This is the Twilight Zone. And it's just short enough that we're not taking any credence away from the Chambers narration, so it doesn't feel too out of place. But we do get some wonderful Serlingisms there. And then we come in. Now, did your guard ever come up, Jay? Or were you kind of in for the whole time? Or were you naturally suspicious, or were you or did you think this was going to be the rare hopeful episode?
No, I thought this was going to be an episode because it's Sterling. No, Serling. I thought it was going to be an episode about that's actually about, I don't know,
embracing the other.
Yeah. Like mistreating a certain group of people, or abusing them.
Well, this is the thing. This is where Serling's true, beautiful nature kind of makes the twist work better.
Yeah, it's true, because I was completely in. I thought the fucking Russian guy was gonna, like, I don't know, start making them breed or something. And
it is that thing of like, we don't I don't want in any way to insinuate that this episode is an allegory for why racism is good. But we've seen so many times of, like, you know, people accepting others and learning that that's the right thing to do. Whereas in this episode, and I guess people are alike all over, we get that thing of, no, actually, sometimes the outsiders.
Sometimes they do want to cook and eat you.
Yeah, all your worst insinuations of the outsiders are real, and and it's that, and it's just great. The Gauntlet. God,
wait, I mean, also just the fact that the Christopher Columbus name drop in the starting narration, I was like, oh, maybe it's a thing about America. And no.
no. This is the one where we're gonna let it slide.
Yeah,
it's kind of like that great litmus test of when the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers came out, and people who were like pro McCarthy and against the communism and the Red Scare were like, yeah, this is a movie about how they could be anywhere. And then people who were against McCarthy and the communism were obviously like, oh, this is a movie about how paranoia can get the best of us. and that great litmus test. And you kind of have that here, but obviously it pays off with that great ending. And immediately we get this we'd like to set up reciprocal visits with Earth and the Canamis. And you go, okay, yeah, we're gonna
Nice.
learn. Yeah, nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they have baseball.
They have a kind of baseball, yeah. And then there's more narration, and just I listened to the short story, but in my moment right now, I can't remember if this is lifted, but it feels very Serling. As a race, we are unaccustomed to charity. Brutality is a far more universal language than an expression of friendship from outer space. This is where you get the argument that he is just the greatest writer of all time. I mean, to put so much into so little of a sentence, it's beautiful. But like you say, the whole time you've got the Soviet Union guy, Mr. Grigori, eating his pencil. And people of the Soviet Union would like to ask candidates precisely, and I repeat that to him precisely. What are your motives in coming here uninvited? Are we to assume there is no ulterior motive beyond this vast humanity you speak of? And he's very cartoonish, and he looks like Telly Savalas, and he is just perfect for building up, like you say, a twist or an episode where the humans are the bad guys. And then we get the Canamites and they take us in. There is nothing ulterior in our motives, nothing at all. You will discover this for yourselves before too long, simply by testing the various devices which will make available to you. And they talk about how they're going to end famine, and they talk about how they're going to end war. And then we get it. We get that montage. Oh, no, that's later, sorry. But this is where we meet Mr. Chambers in the present time, and he's a decipherer, which I don't think is the right term. But anyway, he deciphers codes and that sort of thing is test. And then we get this sort of the ad break of, well, we've licked the title anyway. And I'd call that a pretty altruistic phrase, don't you think? And it's to serve man. And what was your first thought, Jay? Did you click in? He's just so brilliant. You just would never click.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't at all.
Yeah.
It's yeah. I mean, I think obviously we see him just before the outbreak, and Chambers is obviously a very, I don't know, he seems very for the Canamites at this point, whereas when we see him at the flash forward at the start before the narration, he was obviously very disgruntled and annoyed with everything that the person on the other side, who we have realized by now is a Canamite, is saying to him. So obviously in the back of my head, I'm like, so why does he start to dislike them? And I had that point up until the last minute of the episode when I went, oh, that's why. Okay.
It's just absolutely ingenious. And it just never crosses your mind. And I think there's something to be said about that 25 minutes runtime of we spend so long with the Canamites being nice, tricking us and lulling us in, and Serling lulling us in to the extent that, like, I'm sure some people would see this as a boring episode until that twist of like, oh, they're just nice. All right, I guess. And then we get this, they send the short film to the United Nations of the tests being held on the Canamites and the lie detector, which they've clearly faked or whatever, or they've managed to, again, why do they think that human technology will work on?
I have a question about this. I was like, so you know how their talking is transmitted through our heads?
Yeah.
So how did they record the answers?
I don't know.
Unless they were like, excuse me, Mr. Canamite, can you come and dub over what
can you come back
during this point?
Well, I don't. Do we know? I know they've been used for years, but do we actually know if lie detectors work? Because all it actually does is just checks that your anxiety's got up.
Yeah, it's not 100%.
I mean, you know what is 100% factually accurate is the great motion picture Basic Instinct, and that movie has Sharon Stone and Catherine Chamel trick the lie detector test, and I believe that. So there we go. If I trust anybody, it's.
I think they should have had the Canamites on Jeremy Kyle, and it would have sorted this whole thing out within 5 minutes.
They should have. So when I watched the Twilight Zone, this is how iconic an image the Calumet is. When I watched the Annie Washburn Twilight Zone play, which didn't actually do To Serve Man as one of its episodes that it shoved into the play, but it did have at one point a man come out dressed as a Calumet, and that is kind of just as I. How have we never had a Twilight Zone play, roller coaster or house or theme park or haunted house or whatever? What are we doing?
I don't know. That's the
I
play,
think,
but yeah.
do you think maybe they wanted the Jordan Peele one to be more successful?
Probably.
And then they would have,
Yeah.
well, yeah, no, they would have wanted that anyway.
I think most people wanted that. I wanted that. I wanted it to be good.
And then we get this montage, which is Santa Claus came through, and they talked about the force fields, about ending war, which makes sense. Like, I get it, yeah. If you can't end war in the literal sense, a force field around each country, yeah, I get that. It makes sense, yeah. I don't know how force fields are better than borders. Oh no, obviously they are. What a stupid thing for me to say. And then we get this montage of each of the nations and relinquishing their armed weapons, and we get the sort of ticker tape and the more, we go, okay, all right, this is great. Now, I want to get dark, Jay. And I think it's all in the text. We get this montage, as you've already alluded to, of Flight 267. And, they've got a baseball field, and we see everybody going on, and they're all talking about all the wonderful things. And they're talking about how they got letters from home. Now, Serling is a Jewish writer and touched on the Holocaust multiple times in the episodes Death Said Revisited. And this time, I don't know what struck me. It struck me before, but this time especially, all I could see was an allegory for the Holocaust. And the way that they used to send out those, sickeningly immoral trailers and adverts of how great the camps were, and send fake letters and that sort of thing. And I thought, I don't, because obviously this isn't Serling's originated episode. I don't want to put that as an intention on Serling that is so clear in other episodes. But this moment, I just thought, wow, this is just a space age Holocaust.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair reading of the episode,
yeah,
especially all of the ways they big up the Calumet's planet.
And yeah, and I don't want to say
that. Yeah, I can easily connect that in my head, but yeah.
But I think if even if it's not Serling literally equating, which I don't think in this episode it is, but even so, it just underlines the darkness of what's actually occurring here. And then we get, I just love it. The being, and I'm going to now change the tone, but I love the darkness of them being weighed as they get on board, which obviously is something that went past you.
Yeah, didn't even think about that.
And the candidate
I
just
was
smiling.
like, oh, that's weird. Okay.
But again, it's believable enough that we're like, oh yeah, no, they got to get weighed to get on the spaceship. Yeah, they can only have so many on. That makes sense.
For some reason, yeah.
And then the Soviet Union guy who's still eating a huge baguette, and he's just like, step aside, please. I have diplomatic visa. And you're like, okay, brilliant. And then we get Penny, and then we get the one final moment where Chambers is like, yeah, no, there's no more war. There's nothing left to decipher. There's no secret codes to decipher because there's no secret codes. And the character of Patty, or what's she called? She's not called Penny. She's called Patty. Yeah, Patty, the wonderful Susan Cummings. And she is still deciphering. And then it cuts to them, Mr. Chambers getting on the spaceship finally. And then we get this sudden Patty rushing through the crowds. And then we get this incredible Mr. Chambers, don't get on that ship. The rest of the book, To Serve Man. It's a cookbook. And it's just iconic. It's an immediate shift twist. Like so very rarely without, like, I rewatched Fight Club. They did it again at the cinema, and now on rewatches of that, once, even though we know, like, from a certain point about Tyler Durden and Edward Norton, it's like you still have to have him say, "I, you are me." I have to, and you go, "Oh, okay," and it's so rare that they managed to get the twist down to just one line and have it be delivered and have nobody figure it out up until that twist is delivered. That great sort of that shift, and Susan Cummins sells the hell out of it, and they push.
And they just whoosh, throw him
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
Oh my
And
God.
it's just one of those great. What was your initial reaction? Was it laughter? Was it darkness? Was it shock? What was it?
This was just more like, oh my God. Okay.
Because when we watched it, we had a lot of laughter, and when I watched it at the cinema, this was one of the 6 episodes when I watched the special. I think it was the 60th anniversary or whatever, when they did the Twilight Zones at the cinema when I was in Philly, and this was one of them, and it got laughs in the screen, and whether it's, I don't know whether those laughs come on a rewatch, but on a first watch, you're sort of taken in by the darkness of it. And either way, Serling doesn't end there like the story does. He continues, and we get one more moment where we get the bookend and Mr. Chambers, eat heartily. We wouldn't want you to lose weight. And we get that wonderful darkness. And then we get the fourth wall break, which I think works, but I'm not certain, maybe it's in the context of this 25 minutes, it doesn't bother me at all. But in the context of a whole series, it does seem more and more weird. And when he said, "How about you? Are you still on Earth or on the ship with me?" Well, it doesn't make much difference, because sooner or later, we're all of us be on the menu. All of us. Which is very on the nose, but works. Works for me.
Yeah. It's cool.
Yeah. And then Serling gets, the problem is that Serling then goes again. The recollections of one Michael Chambers with appropriate flashbacks and soliloquy, or more simply stated, the evolution of man, the cycle of going from dust to dessert, the metamorphosis from being the ruler of a planet to an ingredient in someone's soup. It's tonight's bill of fare from the Twilight Zone. I have a few boring questions. What happens after on Earth? Does anybody believe Patty? Or is she passed off as a psychopath? What happens next on Earth?
I don't know. I don't think many people actually hear her?
Yeah, do they just immediately get rid of her? Do the candidates just now start killing people obviously, like, rather than taking them off? Or I don't know.
Don't know.
Serling retooled the ending. They played around with the ending a lot, and not the literal. It's a Cookbook was in the short story. They were always going to do that, but they retooled how to do that multiple times. And he actually wrote to David Knight saying that they've made a piss poor attempt to serve men, and that they were going to retool the ending. And he was very, very in multiple notes to Damon Knight about how he wasn't very, very happy with the episode. And then you just go back to these, classic things of like Sondheim doesn't like I Feel Pretty, these classic creators who aren't happy with, I don't think this is Serling's best work, but like one of his most iconic and famous things. And then in the notes further with Damon Knight, he expresses like surprise about how well the episode's been taken. And this was on the eve of a cancellation. And as we've talked about before, with season 4, they avoid the cancellation but take it to an hour's length for the worse. As we've talked about on, we've touched on it, but only have looked at the best season 4 episodes. So it kind of backfires. But I mean, it is an all-timer iconic episode, and Well, like you say, I mean, so many people don't actually know the twist. Oh, pardon me. Don't know the twist and don't know how it concludes. Pardon me. And I've been eating too many humans.
Yeah,
But it still works. I mean, it still worked for you. Talk on that.
yeah. No, I absolutely adored this episode, just every second of it. I just thought it was fantastic.
Have we had our
Totally
first episode in a while, Jay, to crack the top 10?
I think so.
Let's have a look then. Okay, so at number 10, we've got The Silence. I think it can beat The Silence.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of Nightmare at 20,000 feet. Or do you think it's better than Nightmare at 20,000 feet? I think we move The Masks to 10.
Yeah.
And have To Serve Man at 8. And then have
Yeah.
Nightmare at 20,000 feet at 9.
Yeah, I agree.
And we have our first top 20, Jay.
Yay.
Oh, my word. Let's read it off. I'm going to send you the new copy. And we have our top 20. Oh, wow. Okay, here we go. You start with 20.
In Praise of Pip.
Static.
Long live Walter Jameson.
Third from the Sun.
Where is everybody?
People are alike all over.
A Stop at Willoughby.
Nick of Time.
A Chance to Dream.
The Silence.
The Masks.
Nightmare at 20,000 feet.
A Cookbook to Serve Man.
The Long Morrow, the saddest episode ever.
Time Enough at Last.
And the top 5, ladies and gentlemen. Well, and then we go, and then I stop myself straight away because then I go, we haven't done 20 episodes. And then I remember that we still have Walking Distance at number 1 because it's unequivocally the best episode. Number 5 is The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street.
But will the real Martian please stand up?
Especially on Thursday when we leave for home.
Boy, it is a good life.
Don't worry, Jay, because we're walking distance. Oh, Jesus. We have one episode left in our second block, which is another classic episode, which is The Invaders.
Oh.
I've really clumped together a load of classic. Well, this is the thing, isn't it? They're all so many classic episodes. Yeah. It's arguably just one of.
It's just a good TV show.
One of the best episode shows ever made. Jay, these are wonderful as always. Thank you very, very much.